I had this sort of overwhelming feeling that, quite selfishly, I just thought I can't let someone else play this part. I just knew I would find that really distressing.
We're here to talk about Ammonite, which, to give everyone a background, I was very lucky to see it a little while ago, and Francis kind of got it over to me. And as far as I'm concerned, it's a masterpiece. And from an actor's point of view, Kate's performance and Saoirse's performance are incredible and mind-blowing and completely transformative. And I've got to know Kate a little bit since, and it's a completely different character. It's kind of extraordinary. So in terms, firstly, Francis Lee, how did this come about? You obviously made God's Own Country. How quickly after did you know that you wanted to write this story, and how did it start?
Well, it was actually when we were promoting God's Own Country, and we were touring around the world in the UK and doing a lot of promotion for God's Own Country. And I was looking for a gift, a polished stone or a fossil for a friend at the time. And I kept coming across this woman's name, Mary Anning. So I read about her, and I was instantly struck by her circumstances. Here was this working class woman born into a life of poverty, in an incredibly patriarchal, class-ridden society. And through her own ingenuity, self-taught knowledge, determination, and this real sense I had that she had this will to survive, became what we would now call one of the leading paleontologists of her generation. And it was those circumstances really that really propelled me to investigate what that must have felt like to be a woman, a working class woman in this very, very strict male-dominated world. And as she progressed in her life and her career, men would come and buy her relics, as she called them, her fossils. And they would reappropriate those finds for themselves. So in her lifetime, she never had any recognition, really. And it was those circumstances that really pushed me to look at her. There were very little parallels between Mary's life and my life. I'm not saying I was as brilliant as Mary Anning at all, but I grew up in rural northern England, into a very working class family, didn't have access to a great education. Always knew I wanted to write and direct, but just didn't know how I could get to what looked like a very kind of privileged profession that was populated with people who weren't like me.
Brilliant. And Kate, what in terms of how did the script come to you, and what was your sort of first impressions? What was what grabbed you about Mary and Francis and this film?
I'm so excited to be talking to you, Josh, actually. It's just so great. It's just a great opportunity, though, because when we normally do Q&As, it typically isn't an actor and a director, or a director who's asking the question. So it's just a lovely little sort of treat as part of how we're doing this press. I was sent the script, and there seemed to be some degree of urgency around it at the time. I received it quite late in 2018. I was filming something else that was quite difficult, this other thing I was filming. And I always have a little bit of a hard time reading other projects when I'm working on something else. But my agents, who I've been with since I was a teenager, both said, look, can you just please try and read this quickly? Because the director, Francis Lee, really wants to move forward swiftly with a production date, and it would be helpful if they had some idea as to whether or not you feel you might be interested. And I just finished work for the day. I was very tired and just thought, God, I just have to read it at the weekend. I thought, no, actually don't. And I read it now, and I had seen God's Own Country and had been truly, truly blown away by it and by both of your performances and the writing and the directing. But it was the the rhythm and the energy and the sincerity and purity of the connection between the two central characters in God's Own Country that made me feel so inspired to just immediately. I was so excited to read Ammonite because of your film, and I read it at 3 o'clock in the morning and said yes when everyone else woke up. And I was daunted. I was daunted, and I thought, who is this Francis Lee, this sort of new kid on the block, even though he's actually an old fart. But there is something very unique about Francis's rhythm as a filmmaker that I hadn't seen in a very long time, and I know that I haven't been in a film like God's Own Country, and what I felt Ammonite might also be like, based on what I had seen. But I had this sort of overwhelming feeling that, quite selfishly, I just thought, I can't let someone else play this part. I just knew I would find that really distressing. And it was very clear to me that the only person who could play Charlotte was Saoirse Ronan, and I sort of didn't dare think it, just in case Francis wasn't thinking the same thing. And within 24 hours of reading the script, we had our first conversation, and he did reveal that absolutely he believed that Saoirse was right for Charlotte. And so I was just doing backflips from the word go. And then sort of creeping up on Mary a little bit. I had a good few months to prepare, which was really lovely. And just trying to make her my own, which was tricky because people do have quite strong opinions about who she was. People who move in geological circles, people who are from Lyme Regis, they feel very strongly about Mary as though she's one of their own. And so I felt a responsibility to honor the essence of who she was, in terms of her work and in terms of how she lived her life. But at the same time, I felt I had to add a certain degree of grounded backstory that perhaps might not have been written about. And for me, that came into play when I read about the loss of a lot of her siblings, but in particular, her connection with her father, who had died when she was about 10 or 11 years old, quite suddenly. And he had taught her everything that she knew about fossil finding, about paleontology. And it seemed to me she had a very special bond with her dad. And I actually have a very special bond with my dad. And that's not something I've ever been able to explore on screen before. And the loss of her father, for me, signified a huge turning point in Mary's emotional life, from which point on, I believe she had sort of certain emotional chips that were then therefore missing, and a little bit of an abandonment issue, I felt. And that, for me, was what underpinned her inability to openly love freely, to function in social circles with any degree of confidence. And also not knowing how to express real love or a little bit of natural envy, or perhaps sometimes jealousy, without it coming across in quite a clunky and awkward emotional way. So those were the things that, for me, once I'd sort of educated myself about who she was and her pioneering discoveries, I focused much more on the emotional person that she had become as a result of her childhood and her life.